Hello and welcome to Fearless DIY Music. My name is Tristan Lass, and today I'm joined by my dear friend Colin Ranney. He is a solo artist in his own right under that name. I will be putting links in the video description to both his solo work and his work with his band Part Time Perfect, where he is the songwriter, lead vocalist, and guitarist. Very talented individual who's out there playing live, and since I am not a performing musician any longer, I thought it'd be great to, kind of get him on board here, and we would discuss some of the challenges in 2025 of going out and playing live music and trying to get a little bit of money along the way, get a little bit of recognition, and all that sort of stuff. And I just wanted to ask him some questions as to, how he's going about things these days, and to talk to him a little bit about gear. And Colin, is there anything you want to say to kind of introduce yourself before I barrage you with questions?
No, not really. I've been playing a long time. I'm very happy to be here. It's good to reconnect. We've kind of stayed in touch. But we haven't really talked a lot since you moved. So, yeah, I'm excited to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And this will be the first of hopefully many of these where we'll sit down and discuss some cool things, because Colin has tons of experience and he's done tons of trailblazing things for himself with his own career. And I think that his story is pretty inspiring and will be inspiring to everybody who hears it. But today we're going to talk about just some nuts and bolts. And I just like to, kind of start by asking you, we were talking a couple weeks ago, and what kind of gear are you using for amplification live on stage right now? I mean, a lot of I see stuff on the internet and I'm so out of touch. A lot of things about silent stages and things like that, and you don't really run across that where you're at. So what do you use to have like a all-purpose, any kind of, situation amplifier right now?
So right now I'm running a Marshall Origin 50 combo, which is a 112 combo, and it's basically a pedal platform amp. But it's got, it's based on the older Marshalls, but it's got the gain staging type of thing, high, mid, low, where you can set it. It's a 50 watt amp, but you can set it down to 10, down to 5, mid and low settings. So that's super, super useful. It's not the lightest amp. I mean, you could certainly get away with a lighter amp. I see lots of Princetons and Pro Juniors out there, that kind of thing. But it's a great multi-purpose amp. I was hauling around a twin for a while before that, so.
yeah. It doesn't get much more unwieldy than that, unless you got wheels on it or something like that.
Well, I did put wheels on it.
I bet. Well, you kind of have to. Well, that's cool. So you find that with that, like, high low mid setting on your wattage, then so you can kind of tailor your volume to just about any venue then that you're going to be encountering.
Most of the time at a gig it's on high, because I'm using it as a pedal platform.
So you're not blasting it.
Yeah, I just need enough juice to get it into the stage where the amp's working and sounding good, and that's usually high. But having that flexibility is very useful. And I run, even acoustic shows, I usually run through that amp.
Really?
So I have a Godin Fifth Avenue Archtop.
I sold that guitar to you, I believe. Portland Music Company.
I got this one on Craigslist.
You got that one on Craigslist? Didn't I sell you your first Godin, though? I sold you some Arch.
Yeah. You sold me a nylon string.
That's right.
Yes, I wish I still had that one.
Yeah,
I sold that one.
Those were super cool back in the day.
Yeah. No, this is an Archtop.
Nice.
It's called the Fifth Avenue, and its secret weapon is that you can plug it into any amp, and it sounds like a beautiful acoustic guitar.
Wow. Even a Marshall, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Anything. And it sounds really good through a PA. I get compliments on it all the time. So that's a very, very cool guitar. And, I can, it's a little bit overkill as far as hauling it in there, but I can bring the Marshall and the Godin into a coffee shop. Turn it down to low.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, and you talked about being a pedal platform. Could you maybe run through what your pedal board looks like? You don't have to go into exhaustive detail on it, but what are what are the mainstays on your board? What do you think everybody should be looking at if they're using a pedal platform amp and looking at pedals to be most of their tonal variety? Why don't you tell everybody what you use to get your sounds?
Well, I got a analog man King of Tone, which is obviously a very high demand pedal.
Sure.
I just waited on the waiting list. I didn't even know for sure that it was something I really wanted, but it seemed like buying something that gets more valuable the second it's shipped to you was not a hard decision to make.
Yeah.
So I got that, and I cranked. It has a distortion side and a boost side. And I discovered that on the boost side, if I crank the drive all the way up, it's a lovely slightly dirty tone, and that's basically my always on now. So that's really where I get most of my tone from, and especially as the volume comes up on the amp, I could play a whole show just with that. But then I've got the MXR. Oh shoot. It's a DS1 mod. I can't remember what they're called. The red one.
Oh,
Red
yeah,
MXR
yeah.
distortion pedal.
I know the one you're talking about. And I'm sure most people
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's my secondary gain stage, comes right after. And then other than that, honestly, I have a large pedal board, but I consider it mostly for fun. I certainly use it, but for me and for like the way I write, a couple gain stages is really all I need.
Right.
Maybe a
Now,
little bit delay.
what about, I was going to ask about, just like meat and potatoes stuff. So what kind of tuner are you using? Because, I mean, tuning on stage is a big deal. So I was just wondering how you're
Polytune.
using a Polytune.
I use a Polytune. Yeah.
Right on.
I use a Polytune. I just got the new DD4, so I have way more delay than I could ever use, but it's really fun to play with.
Right.
And then I don't actually have. I just added a reverb pedal. I was playing without a reverb pedal for a really long time when I got the Marshall, because I was used to having the reverb on the Twin.
Sure.
But you can mix reverb into the delay on the DD4, so I was kind of doing a little bit of that. And then and then I have a couple fuzzes on there, an octave, a synth pedal.
Right on.
In the band in Part Time Perfect, we like to get pretty out there and weird on the jams. So it's fun to just. I'm a great lover of just making noise.
Yeah, getting some spaceship sounds and then some really heavy, nasty stuff going. No, that's super cool. But I'm glad that you broke it down that way, though, to talk just about like the mainstay stuff, and then the rest of it is just like fun. It's the same with my pedal board. I've got my basic gain stage, and I do have a fuzz sometimes floating around there, but I don't really hit like my phaser and my flanger and my delay until I'm just ready to like do something ridiculous. That's like the end of the song, and just kind of having some fun with it. Now, you mentioned the Godin Fifth Avenue. Now, what is your main like solid body electric or your choice? Like do you have two that you toggle between? I know that back in the day it was like Les Paul Telly, but I don't know what you're doing these days.
I just got my first Les Paul since back in the day, and it's an Epiphone Les Paul that I got secondhand from a friend, and it's great guitar. Yeah, really love that guitar. And then I've got the J. Mascis Squire Jazzmaster, which I love. Best budget guitar I've ever run across, for sure.
Have to agree. I've got a couple classic vibes, and I feel kind of the same way about those. And they're all the same. They're coming out of the same factory, and boy, the Squire stuff is just incredible. Or it was up until a couple years ago. So,
yeah. So, and then I've got a Reverend semi-hollow that I used to play a lot. I don't play it as much. It in the case, it is just enormous. Yeah. So it's like that's kind of one nice thing about the Les Paul is that it's tiny in the case. Case barely adds anything. So then if you're packing that in, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. Definitely. All those ergonomics are huge when you're going out and gigging. And okay, so we've covered guitars and amp and board. Now I wanted to talk about, okay, so what is the situation in monitoring land these days? You told me that, in our call a couple weeks ago, not so much, no in-ear action or anything like that, but have you found that over the years that monitoring in the clubs has gotten better at lower volume, so you're not getting killed up there? Because I remember back in the day performing, especially in the Portland area, in the Vancouver area, where we used to play, it was just impossible to hear yourself most of the time. So I'm just wondering, has that situation improved? Has gear improved? Have sound people improved?
I feel like it probably has. Yeah. I definitely think that there are more rooms out there that expect you to be on the quiet side. Compared to, back in the early 2000s. There are still super loud rooms where you can turn up, but I wouldn't say they're the norm. There are a lot of sound guys, a lot of rooms who expect you to be able to modulate your volume. They'll ask you to turn your amp around, turn it down, And I think, I don't really remember, I wasn't paying attention to the monitoring, throughout my whole musical career, but I would imagine it's gotten better and the volumes have gotten lower. I mean, it's still incredibly hit or miss.
With sound people,
going to places, with sound people and with systems, and it's, are you getting the new stuff or the stuff that's been abused for 10, 15 years? All that's still there. So
So you still, when you're going down to do a show, unless it's a venue that you're really familiar with, every time you walk into a new place, it's just kind of like, okay, we'll see what happens that night kind of feeling.
Absolutely.
That's the stuff. That's one of the biggest reasons why I just decided I didn't want to ever do it again. I have played a couple shows here since we moved from the West Coast, and I walked off stage both times, and I was just like, I'm really never doing this again because I'm at the point where I have tinnitus, but it's not like terrible. But I've lost a lot of bass frequencies because I was playing bass a lot, in other projects, years and years. I lost a lot of that hearing, and I can't be up there with the stuff super loud, and I need really good monitoring. And it's interesting, but it sounds like there has been improvement, but it's still not like it's just going to be venue to venue depending on how much they can afford to spend and how good the sound person is kind of what I'm hearing.
Right.
So it's still a challenge.
And if there's a sound person, there's still playing some rooms where it's board on the side of the stage, and I'm lucky there because my drummer ran sound and lighting for years, so that's on you. I don't have to worry about that in those situations.
Well, it shows once again, though, that, bands, especially, going out to play live, have to be self-reliant, and having, your own education or having somebody who does have that kind of experience in your band is just such a huge asset.
Absolutely.
Because if I knew what I know now about both live sound and recorded sound, I would be able to go and do that so much better than most of the sound people who are trying to do something for me in the past.
Right.
So cool. All right, and then I just have like two more things I would like to cover with you for this episode about playing live music and what you need to be thinking about. What's the booking like? I mean, you're an established artist at this point, at least in your regional in your region. You're known. You have a name. You have a following. So what's booking like these days? Is it do you have a lot of handshake deals, or are there actual monetary guarantees happening? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I think in Portland, I've seen more covers, and in Vancouver too, more covers with a guarantee in smaller rooms. And then you still have all sorts of everything. Mostly it's handshake deals. Yeah. Not always, but the vast majority of the time. And then, the best way to do it is still to go out there and beat the pavement and go to a lot of shows and hang out at places where, the places you want to play, the bands you want to play with, or hanging out. I don't personally get to do a lot of that just because of time constraints, having a family and
Well,
all that
sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
But but I still think it's the best way. That said, social media does help if you're stuck at home. You can. I certainly know so much more about the Portland music scene than I did when I was younger and going out more often because of social media. So that's a
Yeah.
help in finding bands and finding places and stuff.
So, when you're looking to have a night, or you're out, you're like, okay, this month looks pretty empty. So, are you just hitting up all the people that you know via like text or via email or via social media, or
Social media usually, or email. Yeah.
right on?
Yeah, or looking for new places, You see a place that looks cool, you know a couple bands that are good heads and they played there, and you just try them on social media, or try to track down their email usually first, and if you can't find anything, just try them on social media.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, do you have any like standing gigs? Like, do you have like, like booking agents or anybody at any of the clubs that are like, you get emails where they're like, hey, we need somebody for this night? Or do you have anything that's like a residency type thing? Or are you kind of pulled back on that front right now?
Yeah, we have in the past, but not right now.
Not right now. Yeah, because you told
Yeah.
me you're working on some recording projects right now, it sounds like. So cool. And then you kind of dovetailed into my final question. I was just going to say, has social media eliminated, you remember the ancient times, we'd be out there driving around the middle of the night with a 6-pack and a staple
Right.
gun, putting flyers up on telephone poles. I'm sure those days are long dead. But so is most of your promo, word of mouth through your collected community that you have both on social media and, out in the real world kind of thing? And are you mainly just doing your promo then via those social media outlets and the people that you've built as your fan base?
Yeah, it's a combination. I mean, the most important thing, if you're a band and you're promoting on social media, you have to always keep in mind that no one is seeing it, which is not true, but you feel like everyone sees it. You put out 8 posts in a week, and it's like, all my friends obviously know I have a show this weekend, and they absolutely don't.
Yeah, you have to have an email list almost still, right? So you make sure you're actually
and
getting
still
through
reach
to people.
out to people,
Yeah.
if you know that there are people who are likely to come, actually reach out to them. All that kind of stuff is still valid. And the boots on I mean, it's funny that you say driving around, in the middle of the night, putting stuff on telephone poles. In a sense, that's still, like, that's a great social media post, right?
Yeah.
So, like, it's like now, if you have the time and the energy to do that, you can actually get more out of it because you can turn it into content.
Yes.
And you got your flyers up.
And
So it's a weird new world, but I don't think anything's really gone away. And in some cases, if you still are using that boots on the ground approach with social media, you're ahead of the curve.
That's a great point, and I bet for younger bands and younger people who are out there that have the energy to do those things, which I certainly do not, I bet you that it works. I bet you that's really cool because everything is content. I mean, for myself, you know that I just recently released an album, and I think that actually kind of brought you back in. You're like, oh, well, you saw something on Instagram, I think, and it's like, oh, Triss is actually doing some new music, so I'll kind of, and we reconnected. And so it just shows you how well that kind of stuff works, but also I make a lot of content, and that's key because that keeps me in people's, I have lots of friends, I have lots of contacts, I have lots of followers, but if I wasn't doing videos like I am now, nobody would have cared. That album just would have sailed by. And I get my sales reports at the end of each week, and I'm like, wow, this album has traction, and that's great. I'm not going to get rich, but it's cool to know that people are listening to it. Because I think that's kind of where we're at now when we record something. Is that it's not that we want to make money anymore. It's just we want to be seen and heard. And it's cool to hear that for you to be seen and heard as a live performing musician, some of those old school things still make sense and still work because it is ultimately about, I think, feeling a connection because we used to be friends with a lot of people in the audience. It would be like, oh, we've seen you guys 3 times. We know who you are. And, so getting that personal connection. And it sounds like you're still experiencing that.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Well, is there anything that you would like to plug or anything that you want to, because I'm going to put links to you and your band and everything else down in the description, but are there any final words of advice that you would have to a fledgling young band or anything like that to close us out?
Oh, I mean, you just got to get out and do it. I mean, we sit here and talk with the benefit of experience and from doing it. And that's what you got to do. I think the only other thing I would say, if you are a young band, go for it, because the time that you have right now, if you are a young person, you will not have forever. And you can keep doing it. I mean, we're both still doing it, but
absolutely.
it gets different, and most of it is that time thing, finding the time. And if you're in a band with people that are your age and you're older, then all of a sudden everybody has to work that time crunch thing and figure that out. Even if you're highly motivated, I mean, it makes a difference.
It's just the reality, and it's also just that energy. I still have crazy energy I have crazy energy for a 52-year-old person. I really do.
Right.
Compared to most people that I know. But there's nothing like, late teens, early
Nothing
20s
like
energy.
the energy of youth. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can just go. And you don't care, and you can get some bumps and bruises and scrapes, and it doesn't matter because you're gonna dust yourself off and be ready to go. Well, Colin, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. And like I said, we're going to continue having conversations with Colin going forward. If you watch the video to this point, please hit the like and subscribe. Shares are also greatly appreciated. And in the comments, are you in a young, or if you're a young person in a band, or if you're currently in some sort of live gigging situation, any advice, any experiences you'd like to share, drop them in the comments. Check the links down below for all of Colin's cool stuff, and we'll see you next time. Take care.